network, 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 and network with alumni, network with current professors, network with current students.
Hi everyone, before we jump into this conversation, I would invite you to join this community to hear interviews that will inform, inspire, and hopefully motivate you. I am super excited for today's conversation with Sehrish, so let's dive in. Hi Sehrish, can you please introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Sehrish. I am based in Austin, Texas, and I currently am the General Manager for the Central/Texas region at DoorDash, which that translates to is I've got a big geography, which is Central US, that I manage from an operations perspective. Prior to this, I was a engagement manager at McKinsey, and then prior to that, I was a field engineer with Schlumberger. So a very different couple of hats I've worn in my career. In between all of this, of course, I got my MBA from INSEAD, and yeah, I'm excited to be here.
Very good. Thank you so much for sharing that. And indeed, I think that is as diverse a background as it can be. So starting from Schlumberger, it's obviously a great company to work for, right? So when and how did you decide that MBA is the right move for you?
Absolutely. I think that's a great question to start with. I was doing really well in my Schlumberger career. It was phenomenal. I was there for 6 years. And as I started thinking about growth from a bigger perspective, how to accelerate my growth, I realized that, the opportunities were actually outside of Schlumberger. Just because it was a matrixed organization, which just has a very step path to promotion. And I realized to be able to accelerate that sort of pivot, I think an MBA would have been a really good way to do it. And that's why once I realized that this is what I wanted to do, I started looking into what sort of programs would suit me, what I needed to do. I do have to mention, as I was going through the sort of conversation in my head, I looked at different programs, whether it was management programs, MBAs, or masters. And of course, we'll talk more through this, but the MBA became sort of the clearer choice.
When you started applying to business schools, you obviously you applied in round 3 for the business schools, right?
Yes. I guess I'm not the best person in terms of planning. But yeah, as I was mentioning, it all happened very sudden where I was the field engineering operations route maybe isn't the one that I want to consistently climb. By that time, round 2 deadlines had passed. So I ended up just giving my GMAT in the next month and then applying for round 3. Maybe not the most recommended path, but it worked out.
Yeah. Of course, it worked out. I mean, you got into top 3 business schools, United States, Europe. So what made you choose between these schools? And why do you think INSEAD was the right move for you at that time?
Yes, absolutely. So as I mentioned, I didn't have a lot of time, so I had to figure out what are the 4 applications I could get out. It was a little bit of thinking about strategically how much work an application requires and how many could I do because I was still actively working, and I was working in the field at Schlumberger, so which meant I was offshore quite a lot of these days on an oil field. So yeah, I think I put the number at 4. I took the top 3 programs in the US and then 1 program in Europe. And the way I decided was I did a lot of research into what each of those schools were doing. And what that means is I wanted to understand teaching styles. I wanted to understand what they were known for. For example, GSB is known for, a very different teaching style than HBS. And then I also wanted the third thing that I wanted to solve for was what were the career options they were known for, whether it was consulting, whether it was tech, whether it was venture capital. And I wanted to understand which one would be the best placement for me in terms of choosing schools. And I ended up with the 4 top 3 in the US and then INSEAD as sort of my final options. Another reason was also geography. I was based in Paris at that time, so it made a lot of natural sense for me to also want to stay in Europe. I moved to the US for personal reasons, so I think it's a little bit of what the career trajectory that you're going to go after. Of course, where do you currently live and where do you see yourself working? And then a little bit of about what's on offer from each school. And then I pretty much got a full ride at INSEAD, so that just cemented the decision.
That's fantastic. I think getting a full ride in round three at INSEAD is a big deal. Can you talk a little bit more about that experience? I think it was Forte Fellow, right? So how was your
Yes.
experience as a Forte Fellow and for someone applying to business schools this year? How did they get access to something like this?
I think part of my research was one of the biggest questions, I think, as women, as us, we look at MBAs or any grad program is how are we going to foot the bill, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, the MBA cost it's a pretty big cost for 2 years. So I think that was forefront in my mind as I was thinking about making this transition. As part of the research for those schools, I actually looked at what scholarships were being offered and what scholarships I would be eligible for. I necessarily didn't fall under the need-based scholarship category, so it had to be a merit-based scholarship, which basically then also made the options a lot smaller for me. But I realized that Forte Foundation was one of them, which basically does a lot of merit profile-based scholarships, but also need-based scholarships. And there were a bunch of others that I applied to at different colleges. The challenge sometimes is that I want to point out is that you actually are not eligible to apply for scholarships till after the application. And sometimes at most colleges, you're not allowed to do it till after your acceptance. So there are some scholarships that actually open once you get an admit. So you just need to make sure that you research those scholarships, make sure that you are eligible for them, and then you prepare to already get the documents, etc., ready. So when and if you get that admission letter, you're able to apply immediately.
Right. And just out of curiosity, so for the offer to be a Forte Fellow, was it included as part of the admission letter, or did you have to apply for it separately after accepting the admission?
There was an application deadline for the Forte Fellow, which was separate from INSEAD's MBA application. And I applied through that, and I was informed after that, after I actually received my admission letter, that I had qualified for the Forte Foundation scholarship.
Fantastic. Yeah, I think just continuing on that, right? As a Forte Fellow, you got full ride, but along with that, I think an amazing network of women that you're obviously, I think you're very passionate about mentoring and you continue to stay in touch with that. So can you talk a little bit more about that experience apart from the full ride?
Absolutely, yeah. I think before we even get into that, I want to highlight that the Forte program runs an MBA launch program, which actually helps aspiring MBA students to go through the process. They've got a very structured process of taking you through all the way from planning for your GMAT, planning for your applications, to then applying. It's called the MBA launch that I think people should look at least women. It's down for aspiring women that want to do MBA. And then, yes, it's opened up a network of phenomenal women to me. So, of course, we had our bunch of cohort of Forte women at INSEAD. But what I've been able to do is access the Forte network here as well through either Houston or Austin or Dallas or wherever they're based. And I think there's a lot of camaraderie in that a little bit as well. Forte also, post MBA, I think they have weekly events and weekly webinars, lots of in-person meetups. So it actually just continues to give back.
Okay. So and even before you apply for the fellowships after the admissions, you would recommend that whoever is applying, they should look into MBA launch program.
So the MBA launch program is as you're planning for your MBA.
Yeah.
So it's a program that helps you kind of talk through what we've talked about, how to choose a school for yourself. What do you need to do to get your GMAT done? They also have really good deadlines to help sort of be a little bit of that forcing mechanism for you to get pushed in. I actually am a mentor as part of that Forte MBA launch program, which basically means is that every year I try to mentor 6 women as a coach to help them through their MBA journeys. And, the coaching is is group coaching, but it encompasses everything from how to think about schools to how to write your essays.
That's fantastic, and I think I'm so pleased to hear that you continue doing that. I'm sure I think there's a lot of women in Pakistan who can benefit from that. I think just double clicking on that in terms of applying to the right schools and choosing what's best for you, right? For a student that's applying from Pakistan or international students, right? What should be their game plan to apply for MBA, let's say in 2024 September?
Yeah, don't do what I did. I would do not suggest applying in round 3.
Yeah.
I think there's more strategy to do this, and there's a lot of art to this as well. I think the first thing is have an introspective conversation with yourself as to redefining your career goals and where do you see yourself in the next 2, 5, and maybe 10 years. 10 years feels a really long time these days. So I would keep it at 2 to 5. I think what's important is in that career conversation, be aspirational to chart your path, but also be realistic to say maybe, for example, if you want to become a VC, you might realize that you need 2 steps to that path. Maybe the first conversion is post MBA, and then you find a path to that venture capital spot, right? So yeah, write out your career aspirations and be aspiring about them. Then I think based on that, do the school hunt. Like figure out which business school actually gets you there. As I mentioned, HBS does a general management MBA. Wharton is really known for finance. Kellogg can be known for marketing. So make sure that you are really understanding what that school is really known for, right? INSEAD's really, really famous for getting into consulting, right? Also figure out if you want to do a 2-year MBA versus a 1-year MBA, because that's a big difference between, I guess, European schools and the US schools. And understand like what is the cost of a 1-year versus a 2-year MBA, right? Once you have that, I think my advice is not doing more than 5 applications. And that's just because applications take a lot of time and a lot of work. So unless you have a lot of time to dedicate, I think 5 is generally, in my experience, where people hit the limit. And then once you have that, I think start active outreach with alumni and with the school. The earlier you get on their radar, the better it is. So they get excited about you and you get excited about them. The alumni, you can see 2 things. One, if they're excited to represent the school. And then second is, their career journeys. So I always tell people is look for people that are 2 to 3 years out from a school, business school program, and see like what they have been able to accomplish, because I think that's a very good marker. And then I think look at previous year applications, and start looking at what they require from an application. Everyone has different, the requirements are changing. I know there are a lot more video essays right now. There's a lot more interesting sort of essay ideas as well out there. So make sure you do a little bit of research that gives you an idea, again, of what bandwidth this application is going to take. And the last thing is get your GMATs in as fast as you can, because that's generally a step that a lot of candidates get stuck on. Your application shows different facets of you. Mm-hmm. So always remember to think about what facets you're showing with the different essays, different recommendations you are writing or getting written. And then make sure that it all ties together, because the application is a place to bring yourself to the application committee and provide a profile. So what they're looking for is what person this applicant is, rather than just one aspect. And what I'm trying to say, in other words, is don't just get stuck on the analytics. I know a lot of people want like a 760 score, but sometimes 720, 700 is good, because you've proven that you're above 89. You're above the 89 percentile, which basically means you're in the top 10% of whoever's taken this test. And that shows your analytical prowess, right? So then what's the next focus is, how do I make sure my essays show my authentic self? and bring the best qualities that I need to show outside. Then of course your resume is more of a holistic, sort of more deeper, comprehensive view of like what you've accomplished. And then your recommendations should highlight not only what you've talked about in your resume and your essays, but maybe show things that people really appreciate about you and why like someone else is really excited about you. So I would say not get stuck on one part.
Yeah.
I would think about equally weighting these parts out and think about how each of them will bring a different aspect to you to the admission committee, but at the same time, put a needle through every sort of aspect that you're presenting.
That's fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. I feel like whenever I talk to students, the biggest barrier is access to financing options like loans and thinking about how to finance your MBA. Do you have any advice for students who are thinking through this right now?
Absolutely. I think the best way to do is talk to someone that has been an alumni for the last year or someone that's an active student, because they will tell you a lot of the financing options that are available maybe in the country of the MBA that you're choosing, either in the US or at, in Paris or wherever you're going. Because what we might realize is that being in Pakistan, there might not be a lot of options available to us, but each of these programs have financing options. And, you can take out loans that can then help you sort of get to actually attending these. I've seen lots of innovative ones of GoFundMe's, etc. I mean, if that's something you want to do, go do that too. But the best advice you can get is someone that's currently in the school or someone that's basically graduated maybe 2 years from now, because you'll get both perspectives. One, how to get access to funding with the current programs that are available. And then two is like maybe 2 to 3 years on, how are they repaying that loan?
Sure.
And scholarships are always there, right? Look for scholarships, apply for scholarships. A little sometimes unknown fact is that you can sometimes negotiate scholarships. So don't be afraid to say, can I get a little bit more? The max they're going to say is no.
Do you have a hot take? Like, how do I increase my chances of being accepted at one of the top schools?
Network. And be very professional.
With the alumni students, yeah.
Yes. Write to teachers. If there's a professor that really inspires you, please don't be generic about these notes. That's like something I want to preface this with. People can tell when you're writing very generic notes. And if you're asking for someone's time, be very respectful for it.
Sure.
That is something that I've learned that we as Pakistani students necessarily don't do well. So this is my preface to start with, is be respectful when you're asking for time and don't write generic notes. And be okay with not getting a reply back. But network, and network with alumni, network with current professors, network with current students. All of them will give you very valuable information that can help you make decisions. Sometimes they will have their hot tips to share. And, this is also a way to get sort of the current cohort or like the people that are running the MBA admissions process really excited about you. I think all of these MBA programs have some form of an outreach or webinars. You should definitely attend one, come up with a good question, make your profile stand out. I think one of the things I did was I reached out to a lot of alumni, just to get a feel for the schools, but then also again, get like what was something that stood out on their application. And then the second thing I did was I kept in touch with generally the people on the admissions committee. And a lot of times you might not know who those people are, but you can just go for, like, you can LinkedIn search and say who runs overall processes for these, right? Who is the POC if you have any questions, and then make sure that you're engaging them as well.
Fantastic advice. So you've had a very successful career, mashallah, from Schlumberger to McKinsey and then now at DoorDash, right? As a woman, was it difficult to create your version of American dream?
I think no. And why I say this is I've never put gender as part of something that I'm solving for. And I think that maybe is a little bit of a privileged reply because I went into Schlumberger and I was generally the only female on an oil rig when I started working. I often got confused as a kitchen hand. So they would say the kitchen's that way. And, my laugh was, my joke was always like, I'm here to run your operations. I'm here to run some explosives for you. Clearly not going to happen from the kitchen, right? And I guess I sort of just developed a really thick skin in my oil and gas career to not think of my gender as something that was a driving force. Or like something that was like, something I had to think about consistently. So no, but I also, having said that, I also recognize the challenges of being a woman in a workplace. And there is absolutely no doubt about that, right? I often comment as a lot of the conversations I have are the same conversations I had 10 years ago. I've been working for 12. So those things haven't changed. I think my recommendation here is, again, being very true to yourself and your values and understanding what motivates you and then making sure you stick to them, right? I'm a mother. I have a 2-year-old son. So having him in the mix is also very challenging, being able to balance, work and being able to be a mom to him. And I think what I've done is I've operationalized different ways of working. So an example of that is I get up really early and I do a lot of work in the morning before he wakes up and goes to school. I will generally shut down at 4 p.m. And sort of put some time in between 4 to 7 to, play with them. And then after bedtime, I log back in. And I've made sure that some of those expectations are carried through to my teams. So yeah, I think when it comes to the American dream, there's nothing stopping you from creating your own dream. I don't necessarily think that your gender should stop you from achieving anything. It will make it a little bit harder. You might have to work a little bit harder. But you kind of just, I think if you're good, you get through. That's the beauty of, I guess, a little bit of being in the US is if they recognize your value, nothing's going to stop you.
I love that. And thank you so much for sharing that. I feel like that's so refreshing and at the same time inspiring for someone like starting the career in probably 2-3 months. Thank you so much for sharing that. Do you have any final advice for students?
I think plan this out. Ask for support. This can be a very intimidating process. One of the advice that I give a lot of my mentees is find 2 people who know you really well and then find 2 people that don't. And as you go through your application process, get them to review each part of your application. And what that does is that the 2 people who know you really well will surface all the things they already know about you. So they've got an inherent bias, but they're good to make sure that, these are the things that we should be highlighting. But then the 2 people that don't know you, they give you advice on blind spots necessarily, or things that are unclear. And they will help you understand gaps that you might need to fill, or ask some really interesting questions that you haven't thought about, right? And I think that's the way to understand and make a very holistic, wholesome application process. Also, find support in other people doing these MBAs or doing these applications with you. I think it's really helpful because then you can trade ideas. And of course, you can also, vent because sometimes you just need to say, this is so difficult. It's not an easy process, and doing it alone definitely does not make it easier.
That's true. That's true. So just wrapping this up, what's next for Sehrish?
What's next for me? I think I'm just learning to enjoy my life one day at a time, and really learning to enjoy my work. I have had a phenomenal time at DoorDash so far, so I see a lot of growth here. But yeah, also always searching for the next awesome opportunity as well. So I think right now, super content with where I am, and ask me in 2 years what I'll be.
Yeah, I cannot wait to see all the great things that you will do, all the great heights you will achieve. And thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today and just doing this interview. Thank you so much, Sehrish.
Absolutely. It was a pleasure.